Actually, now we are live on the right screen, hopefully too. Let me quickly verify that that's actually the case. Looks like it. Yeah. All right. So since this is Levi's first. Basically, we just walk the API top to bottom. You can ignore the div effectively. The div just tells you where we added a question mark, but every time we did not, you don't see a div. Everything means it's now non-nullable, right? So keep that in mind. So you basically have to review everything regardless of whether there's a div or not.
Is the diff between 2.1 and 3.0 or between 3.0 like preview 5 and 3.0 preview 6 or what?
The intent is it's before and after nullability, no matter whether that was already in 3.0 or...
Okay. So if I want to know when these APIs were introduced, I'll just do APIs.
Yeah, you basically have to look that up. We did not have that.
It's totally cool. Okay. So for types like assembly dependency resolver, where they're brand new for 3.0, is there any reason that we can't just mandate that they return non-nullable strings?
Oh yeah, I mean, we can decide to put nullable, non-nullable.
Okay.
Like there's no breaking change comes. I mean, there are concerns after we ship whether it's nullable or non-nullable, but we're generally okay with changing those annotations based on custom feedback as well.
Yeah, I mean, we would just be locking in a behavior for all time. But
yeah,
I mean, in practice, if we ship a version that never returns null, it would be breaking to make it return null in the future anyway.
Yes, but we basically said like problem is the annotations themselves are not that clear cut.
Okay.
So there isn't some sort of editorial aspect to it where we have to decide what we want there. Steve, do you know these APIs?
You mean the reflection ones?
Well, the whole loader APIs. So I suppose null here means it couldn't be resolved.
Yeah, I mean, I took over the feature from Addy. I mean, I could look at the code, of course. I'm sure that's how it was determined, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, the problem is our loader has various different policies. Sometimes errors indicated by throwing exceptions. Sometimes indicated by returning null. Given that they are non-null, I assume that means error in this case. And we don't throw when we can't.
This one is it figures out what the path should be, and if it exists, it returns it, and if it doesn't, it doesn't.
I know I mean, it'd be interesting to compare this with well, the main assembly. Let me think here for a second. Oh, these are all new here. Okay, eventually we'll get to.
Both of these methods, the returns are guarded with if file.exist. If the file it thinks it should find doesn't, if it doesn't exist in any of the search paths, it returns.
Yeah.
Certainly that can be changed to throw, but what someone wrote.
Yeah, I'm not arguing it should throw. All I'm saying is that I've seen both.
Yeah.
I'm just asking whether it will ever throw or whether it always return null. But
A&E is the only thing that's obvious. They both agree that the input cannot null.
So it sounds like for the methods that return potentially nullable objects, those are just the equivalent of try methods, and they return null on failure. That's what.
That's how I read it.
All the we have a question mark here because the method is tested / visibly returns null.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Yeah, when you first asked me that, I was thinking that this is metadata load context, which it is not. So
How can an assembly be in no assembly load context? How is that possible?
Maybe the default one.
So the default one is the static one, no?
Is there a static default?
I thought we had a static default one. Yeah, this is the one.
Let's find out.
So how, I haven't been to all of these reviews, but how do we typically determine whether that question was added? I mean, is it all manual or are there automated?
Nope, that's
script?
all manual. So that's why I usually write the question down if it's not something we can easily check with like source.net.
Yeah, so the assembly load context .get load context never returns null as an implementation detail. You're right, it returns default if the assembly is not associated with one.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, there is an exception. If you pass an assembly that's not a runtime assembly.
Gotcha. Well, in that case, that makes sense.
It seems almost like it should throw at that.
So if you pass in an assembly builder, it will return.
Yes. Okay.
Or
And for any virtual method that is nullable, I mean, do we look at all the implementations of that? That was kind of more I was thinking with the metadata load context.
So in general, like it's okay if the base is nullable and the derived one says I'm not nullable on the return values because you can always narrow.
But we make the base say nullable if any of the derived types that we have in the platform return null.
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody did the work and figured this out already manually.
Yes, all of this has been done manually, and some of it is where we say that doesn't make any sense and override what they did manually.
All right, so I think this one, anybody else any feedback on this one? Otherwise, that's it, right?
And so I didn't look at any of the ones that say that they don't return null, but all the ones that say that they return null now do seem to be reasonable.
So I think you may have gone over this earlier, but two-string overrides, nullable, not nullable?
So we basically said that the base is nullable because people actually do return null from them, mostly by accident, but they do.
Okay.
So if you actually call object toString, you probably want to assume it's null.
Yeah.
But if you call toString in a particular derived type, which the compiler usually knows because your T is generally not typed as object.
Okay.
And most of our overrides are marked as non-nullable.
Okay, so even though this is a non-sealed type, we would want toString to return non-nullable following those rules.
We would consider that a bug.
So once you go into this type, if you derive it, then the contract says you should not be returning null anymore.
Sounds good.
The string that empty is not.
But you raise a good question. So why does load give you null, but the other ones do not? So the other ones just throw then?
These are int pointers.
No, I mean these guys, all the ones that return in assembly. So they just throw them if you can't resolve them?
I guess, yeah.
That seems a little bit weird behavior-wise.
Well, if you're loading it from a stream, like you have to do something because a stream clearly exists.
Sure.
So, like, worst case, it will say, like, hey, the stream doesn't have an assembly.
I guess that's a good point.
Which
So
type
these
is
guys
this?
are,
Assembly load context.
I guess these guys are all like, you already have the data, so clearly it's either valid or it doesn't, or it's not, right? In which case it would throw. This one is a bit weird though. How would that not return now?
And how's that different than the method directly above it? Oh, okay.
Right, so the virtual, the default of the virtual, protected virtual assembly load is return null.
Yeah.
So any derived type has to provide a behavior it doesn't do it. Assembly load context non-virtual load from assembly name just says runtime go load this assembly. So one of them is a foofy go figure out what you're supposed to do behavior, and the other one is it just calls assembly.load and that's it. So assembly load from assembly name just calls assembly.load assembly name.
So that means it either succeeds or blows up.
Yep. Or it does exactly what we've said assembly.load does.
It doesn't go through the protected load one?
Nope.
That does not make sense to me.
The protected load is only called from...
Load from assembly name really means load the platform assembly then, right?
As far as source.net is concerned, nothing ever calls that virtual.
But it's also non-virtual, right? So like it would only ever call the runtime, so it would never go through any other hooks.
Yeah, so load from assembly name is just a forwarder to assembly.load.
Okay.
I mean, there's a little bit of magic. Like it may understand it's a reflection context or whatever.
Yeah.
Because it passes a stack mark and then pulls an internal load.
That seems like something we should probably look into whether that actually. I mean, it's possible that the runtime returns null, right?
Maybe we didn't document it as returning null.
Well, it's a runtime
Don't
call.
think it can return null.
Sometimes it wants.
Like, I don't think in practice it does it.
Can't do something, you will make the runtime do it.
That's good message.
All right, I just wrote it down, and then we can look at this offline. All right. I think this was the only thing we had.
Yep.
Let me grab this on my side of the screen.
Assembly load will throw a file not found exception if you give it garbage.
Wow. But this is calling an internal load to figure out which context it's calling it.
Yeah, sure.
At the end of the day, it's just calling in load.
All right, so this is, what is it, runtime interrupt services? Yeah. System runtime. Yeah, so the exceptions are just following the pattern we already have, so that seems fine.
Structures both throw, initial throws. I like this guy, it's not value types.
Safe buffer is not a value type.
No, but it threw if it was null. And then every other method is value types. Right array presumably throws if you give it a null array.
What's safe buffer again?
Safe buffer is a safe handle that also allows you access to unmanaged memory. So you can project it as a contiguous buffer that you can write to or read from.
So it's a safe and managed native buffer, effectively.
Yeah.
So with right array, oh, it says what Jesus struct. Say, do we have to say that you can pass in an array that already has nulls in it? We just promise we won't write nulls, but it says Ratia struct, so we don't have to answer this question.
Because it has to be floatable.
Right.
Doesn't say that one. It says Ratia struct. It may throw later if it's a bad type, but. Okay. Why do we have array with offset and array segment?
Because this is different.
Sure. This one has array type as an object.
And it does not have a length. I mean, most of this seems to be like bordering on wasting time. I don't think that interop matters.
What about beast or wrapper? Like, you actually can pass nulls in there, and it works.
Co-class attribute. But we said that. Have we said that attributes we want them to always say they can accept null because they can, or do we want them to be rational?
You want them to be reasonable because otherwise, I mean, that's the only validation you ever get because you basically never ever invoke the attributes.
Okay.
You would never catch them IREF.
And so the property, so for co-class attribute, it doesn't validate that it doesn't get null.
So which one are you looking at? Oh, this one?
Yeah. So just making sure that the property doesn't need anything declared on it of like, this is not null as long as the constructor was observed. We promise that if you call it wrong, you get a bad value.
Yeah.
Okay.
The problem with these guys is you cannot really, if you add code like if co-class equals null for I would not exception, that just means that you can never retrieve instances of the attribute that's in metadata, right?
Right.
Which is generally why validation in attribute constructors is largely useless. Because the time you invoke it is not the time where you want to have the validation.
Yes, but why would this not be nullable then? Because null would be a valid value.
Because you're not supposed to pass in null for the type. That's the only way you ever get a compiler error, right?
This is our, we treat attributes.
Attributes are special.
Attributes are
Got
special.
Got it.
Okay, aware event info, if you give it a null type, it null refs.
But to your point, the B string wrapper you're saying should probably be accepting nullables?
Well, I'm looking at the code, and the code literally just says wrapped object equals value.
So now it accepts values.
It
now we have
accepts
to
null.
figure out if it's expected scenario or not.
I don't know if it is.
It's does it then like crash or something if
I mean, you could just new one of these things up to class.
Yeah, but like if you pass it this.
Oh. It's probably acceptable, like just knowing interop, it's probably acceptable to pass that through a p-invoke layer. Let's see here.
sometimes we've made the annotations match our intent instead of.
You might have to ask Jeremy K about this. But looking at where it's consumed, it looks like the consumer also anticipates null might be a return value.
Yeah, I agree. That one looks like it's null in, null out.
Yeah.
Both constructors. Well, I mean, amusingly, the object constructor will throw if given a value that is null.
Yeah.
Because it just hard casts it.
Yeah, which is fine.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess the thing to check is did net FX. Nope. Net FX is the same. Null can go in and null can come out.
Okay. I noted it. Comma where event info.
So because it's grayed out, that means it matches the event info base class, correct?
Means it says override.
Yeah, I don't think we actually do the diff. It's possible that the base is declared
Okay.
nullable or non-nullable. Some compatible version actually.
Lots of attributes.
There we go. Finally got a thing that agrees that the event name shouldn't have been null. Okay.
Wait, what?
Oh, on the, I don't know, the thing with all the overrides. There's a public constructor that says it needs a non-null type and a non-null event name. The non-null type was easy because it null-refed. The non-null event name was harder because it went through 11 layers of indirection before anyone looked at it. So.
Look at this beautiful naming, capital letters for parameter names. Oh.
Events.
Yeah, that one, I believe. Yeah.
null, combine, and D is null, you will null reference. Presumably remove as if you remove the last elegant.
I believe that's true.
I don't know how I feel about com source interfaces attribute.
Well,
No, they can't be null. Okay. No, it was going to be, should the everything after source interface 1 say it could be null because it's a forward flow waterfall, but it's not. It actually reads each argument individually and just simply blindly dots through it. So if you pass null, you can't instantiate this.
It just blows up.
I mean, because it will call null.fullname.
Sure.
Feels legit.
Oh, let's see.
If object is nullable throw.
Okay.
It's trusted in enum? I think it is, right?
But it's on an attribute, so it doesn't matter. It should be an enum.
Yeah.
But what's the rule for things that go on attributes?
Well, if null is allowed, then we should allow it. If it just null references when you pass null, then it doesn't make sense. Again, the question is like, would a reader of this thing expect this to be null?
Okay.
Like default parameter is a good example, right? Null is a completely valid default value.
Yeah.
Since it's, for most types, the only default value.
So how far have we gotten?
When we find a case where the code will null ref or just kind of fail, do we go back and add a proper exception check there or not, or just leave it as is?
Well, depends on where the check is. If the check is in the attribute constructor, I don't think it buys you much. Because
In general, just wondering if we've been doing that, going back and retroactively.
We fixed some cases, but not all.
yeah, Stephen had tried to hold the line that we don't change IL
Okay.
if possible.
But we would be slightly justified in going to the, if we cared about the com source interface's attribute of being able to instantiate it, adding the null checks. So that we could, but that's really a matter of like, if we feel like filing bugs, we can fix them. You're free to file them.
Sure.
I think we're too lazy in this. That just went through
Well,
the
it's just a lot of APIs.
Interop service is chock full of APIs.
Mhm. And they're all beautiful.
Sure, we'll say that.
Yeah, I agree with that one. That makes sense.
Which one?
So value can be, will not be null. Is that what it means? If you don't add the,
Yeah.
okay.
I don't know what value actually means.
On DLL import attribute?
Yeah.
It's the DLL name passed to the attribute constructor.
Obviously.
Obviously, yes.
Like I expected it to be the path plus some thing magic.
It's just whatever the string is that you give as the required argument. So we're just saying it's required because it makes no sense to have a different value.
I mean, you could always pass in an empty string or null. It's just it would blow up at runtime.
Yeah. Since it makes no sense to programmatically assign null, we say don't assign. Really, error wrapper fails if you give it no exception. Used to wrap the fact that nothing went wrong.
Would this apply to all attributes? Like the value, like for example in the GUID attribute case? Is there a general rule that you can say?
Like which one?
For all attributes that take in the string, data property value, it will be non-nullable.
Well, the question with the attributes is always, so the problem of attributes in general is like the code never runs, right? And especially bad for things that are read with metadata or the compiler reads them. Like it doesn't even matter whether you pass in null or not. The compiler will just ignore those guys, right? Which means for the most part, if null is not a valid state, you never get an exception, but it also never works. So in that case, you should mark it non-nullable. There are cases where passing in null makes complete sense, like the default value attribute, where we just say, yo, we mark it nullable because null is a valid value. But if the value itself is not sensible, then non-nullable makes the most sense because it's the only case that the compiler could actually tell you that you're passing the wrong value, because you never ever construct these attributes. I know we're basically saying, yep, if you manage to pass in null, then yep, you get null reference later, but we probably would have gotten null reference later anyway. Because the constructors, for the most part, don't validate, because at that point, it's damage has already been done. So Jeremy, error wrapper?
Working on it.
So I was looking at that.
How much individual
The exception is allowed to be null.
Okay.
The object
Has to be an int.
has to be an int.
So the object can't be null.
But the exception can be.
Well,
Because it turns into 0 if you
Yes.
pass a null exception.
okay, yes,
I was testing this.
yeah.
while you
So
were
I was
talking.
doing that. So the problem is it went into it did a Q call into the runtime. So I didn't know how
Oh,
it
I
behaved
see.
on null. The answer is it returns. So on an error wrapper, exception should be question mark. Object should not. We can decide we don't care.
I mean, this goes back to let me guess. Originally, we only had this API and its soft birth as the exception, so as the error code, and then
Probably.
it split these guys
I mean,
apart.
the thing that the object constructor does is just cast it to int. So I don't know why we have an object constructor on it.
Probably because the error code's coming back as a variant or similar, and we haven't unboxed it yet.
Oh god.
I mean, this is all meant for commenter off.
Yeah, if
Yeah, I guess that's
if
true.
error code's not int, throw argument exception.
This is what I said earlier. It might be a waste of time.
Yeah.
The handle collector. So we pass in a null name. What does it mean? We return empty then?
Oh.
All right. So for the GUID attribute, there's only one caller of GUID attribute.value, which is it sends it to new GUID, which throws if you get null. So we are saying you should not give it this guy null.
So the handle collector constructors do explicitly allow null as name.
Did they promote the property? To,
What is the property?
They promote it to empty string. Yes, they do.
So null can
So
go
copy
in and
this
null will not
return.
promote.
This one right here.
yeah.
Oh man, handle.
How does this type work even? I don't understand.
So that's a
Handle
great
wrap?
interface.
Huh?
The iCustom adapter, get underlying object. What's it do? Whatever.
Wait, so what are you looking at right now, Emo?
I was wondering how a handle collector works at all, because it seems like you have add or remove, which basically just means it's a glorified ref counter. So I have no idea what happens when you reach 0. What does it collect?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Handle ref allows null. I mean, handle ref is a glorified
That
unsafe
makes
handle.
sense.
The struct cannot be null. Okay.
So I have no idea what we want the behavior of iCustom adapter get underlying object to be, because it's never
What about
read.
the handle itself? The handle graph?
Yeah, I would be shocked if you can return null though.
I don't like this. Is just I don't know if com IUnknown handles a null dispatch. If
I
it
don't think
does,
it does.
If
I
it
think
does.
it's you crashing if you do that.
then not null is correct.
Okay.
Ooh, system exception. The book that says do not derive from this.
Custom marshaller takes an object. Is that I custom marshaller?
I mean, it's an interface, so we probably don't have anything that uses it. We do.
Well, Marshall managed to native might never get called if the input object is null, but I don't know offhand how all of the marshalling works. Because generally speaking, this interface is implemented by a meta type specified in some metadata somewhere, which basically says, oh, you're trying to pass a person across a p-invoke boundary or a con boundary. Let me tell you how to actually marshal that thing.
Right, there are only 2 hits for this in framework. For Marshall managed to native, they both hard cast and then dereference. Well, I guess one of them converts it to int.
Yeah.
So it looks like maybe null doesn't make sense.
I'm seeing that too. You're looking at the custom marshal or another interface?
I custom marshal or .marshal managed, but there are no calls.
Yeah, and the implementation's like everyone does a null check in the implementation, so.
In
For
framework,
Marshall?
no one does a null check.
I'm looking at source.net.
Yeah, you're looking at core. I'm looking at framework.
Okay, yeah.
In framework, the only one that really uses it is WinForms, and they just hard cast it to font, and then dereference it.
Yeah, I found that. There, in core, some other core types have an explicit null check on the entry point to that method. So, I guess leave it as is.
Yeah, may as well just say. I'm gonna say non-null, and if it ever matters later, then we'll do something. And in framework, there are two implementations. Their cleanup managed data does nothing, never looks at it.
I believe that. I think most of the interrupt ones are in the territory of you get various different degrees of interesting behavior when things are not the way they want them to be.
Yep.
Oh man, Marshall.
The amount of times I have spent on the Marshall class and trying to unfuck it. Not happening, man. We tried to split it in Windows 8, we gave up.
Problem with all the marshaller stuff, I'll just keep. Who knows?
Yeah. Also, the naming is absolutely superb. Change wrapper handle strength. Object OTP bool is weak.
Is weak.
Is weak.
Where T is object?
That means it. Should that now be where T is not null?
Yeah. This is the old encoding.
Okay. It means it can't be null because there's no question mark on it.
Okay, got it.
We fixed the syntax. There's a syntax that looks less broken.
Remember when I said generics are hard? This is an example.
So this means T has to be a struct or a non-nullable reference type, and it can't be nullable of T because even though it's a struct, it's a nullable struct. Am I interpreting this correctly?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, there was something like that.
It means it excludes any nullable of T, and that if it's a reference type, then it inherits non-nullability.
Great.
All right. What are the Marshall.copy things do they document that this thing? Yes. Okay. It's good because I'll keep this.
So destroy structure requires a type. Final release com object will throw if the input's not null. I'm sorry, will throw if the input is null. There we go.
That's not a very
You knew what I meant to say.
The other one.
Generate GUID for type I hope throws if the input's null. Yes, it does.
Hit com interface for object. Calls. No, probably doesn't.
Yeah, I was going to say, those seem fine, right?
I mean, it could be returning at pitter.0 in those cases.
Get com object data. What does it even mean?
Bet it means Q call.
Let's look up some Q calls.
It doesn't mean Q call yet. Okay, if obj is not the secret type com object, then it throws.
What the fuck is key?
Otherwise, it calls get data with whatever your key is.
Oh, this is the isn't that the com version of iDispatch?
Might be. If the object has no object map, it returns null. There are definitely cases that can return null. Key can be sometimes null, but let's just go ahead and say it can't. I think hash tables indexer says have a null.
And how do we know that get exception for HR can return nullable exception?
That I can tell you that that's correct behavior.
0 probably returns null.
How do we know?
Because I just happen to know that that's correct behavior.
Alright.
Get HR for exceptions correct, because we've tested that one in the last few minutes.
Get iDispatch and get iUnknown require non-null inputs. I'm tracing back through the Q calls. You're welcome.
I mean, that makes things more honest, but. Look at native.
Okay. Fortunately, they're all confined within a single gigantic file.
What? Get objects for native variants. It returns a key array.
I don't even know what that means.
I'll do is com object.
Ah, that hurts. That hurts so much.
What is it?
Pointer to string ANSI pointer. If the pointer is 0, it returns null. Pointer to string ANSI pointer length. If the pointer is null, it returns the empty string.
Great.
It makes complete sense. But you're wrong.
Oh, no, sorry. If the pointer is null, it throws.
Great.
I guess.
Levi. This thing is a key array question mark. When you return it, you don't. Would this not be a key array question mark?
What are we looking at?
So Essen's looking at get objects for native variants. So the one
This is the one with
direct,
the key array.
yeah, the one directly beneath where the cursor is right now returns an object, a potentially nullable. I'm sorry, a non-nullable array of potentially nullable
Yeah,
elements.
so T is
Yes.
transparent, so it actually doesn't tell if it's. Depends on what T you use. With nullable T.
You mean the one line?
But
below
there's
it?
a property, something like maybe null or something like that. What is it? Allow null. Probably should have that attribute.
Yeah, it seems this is basically the multi version of this one, right? So if this can return null, this can return null. Problem
So
is
what
here
was the
is
one
you
below
can't
it?
express.
No, I
that
think
it-
there is the allow null or something like that attribute.
You don't need this because it depends on what your T is. If your T is string question mark, then it can return nullable.
No, but even if the string is non-question, like it's still can.
Well, that depends on the method, maybe, but it might be that in your case, it doesn't actually.
I mean, it's quite likely that all it understands is string versus string question mark, which means say string in, you might still get null out, which may be the concern here. So this one might need to indicate that there may be an attribute on this one, because this is the maybe might be. I don't know if this has a might be null if it's a reference type, because we don't have a way of expressing that.
Might be null if null.
Right, but we have I know that there's an attribute for saying if T is a reference type, this may be null, but if it's a value type, because the problem is we can't put a question mark here because that would turn int into nullable event, which is actually a binary breaking change. So we have to do an attribute in this case to say the values may be
I
null.
think it's called allow null or something like
Yeah.
that.
But we can't see that in this view because we can either see what changed or what the attributes are, but not both.
Yeah.
What
now
about
is
the array
input
question
side.
mark? Like T array question mark.
That would
I-
mean an array of, if T was int, that would say it would be returning an array of nullable ints. But it's not returning an array of nullable ints, it's returning an array of ints. It's only if it's a reference type that it might be null. And there's an
Yeah.
attribute for that. We just can't see it here.
So I thought the nullable ints would only happen if the question mark was between the T and the bracket. I'm talking about the question mark being outside the two brackets.
Yeah, there's
Like
the
the
array
array
can be,
null itself.
Right.
But-
So it's, okay.
but that might actually be not the case, right? I mean, like that's similar to how we did other things like params, right? Where we said, well, the array is never null. The array might be empty, but the array is never null. So that's why I think these two to me look consistent. You have the singular version and you have the multiple versions.
Yeah. Okay.
And then this one is just the generic version of this guy. So it depends on what the guarantees are.
But this is actually like, even if we have the allow null attribute, we cannot express this with the arrays, right?
Well, there's a low null which is input, and I think what you mean is output, which is maybe null.
But the null actually would probably not be an
Framework
attribute,
actually
like,
makes it look like the array that it returns might be null.
That's why I'm looking at the implementation as use up an array as source as a T.
Well, in framework, the generic one calls the non-generic one, and then says if that returned non-null, make a new typed array and copy it. Which means that it thinks that the non-generic one can return null. Or they were just programming defensively.
Okay, let me just add this.
So it's a internal call. So I don't know what it does. The .NET Core version dereferences objects.length without checking for null, so it believes that it's not getting null back. But framework checks for null.
Okay, I noted it.
So I'm going to make you sad here. I believe get object for I unknown and get unique object for I unknown could in certain cases return null. However, I'm pretty sure no one in their right mind is ever doing it.
So where's that?
Get unique object for I unknown, it takes an int pointer, and also get object for I unknown, which is around half the screen above it. There is a way, because I know this because I've done it before, to trick the runtime into thinking that you have a com-callable wrapper that's laid out in a certain fashion, and then you can make it return. You can make it return things that it normally wouldn't have returned, including potentially null for that.
I mean, the question here is:
no one should ever be doing this.
do we want
But
to
is it?
do we
I
want
did
to
it.
say
I had a
that
scenario.
if null comes out, it's a bug, or that if someone calls this API, they should be defensively, or they should add a null check? Putting the question mark here just says you should add the null check. Like that's really all it says. If there are cases where it can do it, and we believe that that's a legitimate case, then we should say this might return null.
Yeah.
You should be checking it, buddy.
You should only skip the null check if you yourself controlled that end pointer and know exactly what's going on in the covers. So that probably implies just leave it as non-null and
Well,
make
that
it work in
non-null
majority of
means
cases.
you don't need the null check. That you should just skip the null check.
No. I mean the overwhelming majority of users. Like I'm the one and only person in the world that's ever relied on changing the implementation of this method.
Okay.
So my question here is because I wasn't in the previous reviews. Is the idea that you want to hit like the 99.99% case, or if there's even one case somewhere in the world where someone might be doing that, like you need to account for it.
So
It's a valid case. You should
Yeah.
be doing.
If this requires passing in a thing that's a misaligned pointer
It's
that
not.
can never have been
It's not.
returned, and you are, you're depending on a like ASLR snafu and an AV in the middle of doing this lookup that gets caught, then no one cares.
It does
If this is
require
a
multiple app domains, though.
If it's a legitimate, you can have obtained this value from something and null comes out, we should say null can come out.
In my scenario, I had multiple app domains, which doesn't exist in Core.
But it doesn't. Framework, which we've used to sometimes codify what the API does.
Sure, although like
I'm just.
if you
This
can't
only
do the
matters.
scenario on core, then I don't care.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it requires app domains, then maybe we should say null.
Okay. I don't feel passionately about it. It's just I wasn't here. I wanted to broach a question.
Yep.
Like the general spirit of the feature is if you ignore the annotations on input boundaries and sneak in null, it's okay if we give you a null back. We're not too bad for that.
Okay, that's fine.
But since this takes just int pitter, there are no annotations on the input.
Right.
So,
You yourself had to craft a special input to do this. Okay.
Relink all.
Those do null checks on their inputs. Prelink and prelink all.
I have no idea what they mean.
I think it's just an thing.
Punk. Query interface punk.
The pointer to ANSI supports null, but then the one that takes length does not. That's a bit odd.
What are you looking at?
You mean the pointer to strings?
Yeah.
Yeah, I already looked at those. That's the... On that one, if PTR is 0, it returns null. And on the next one, if PTR is 0, it throws.
Right.
Yeah, our general pattern is we allow 0 on the ones that take a length or an offset, right?
I'm just telling you what the code does.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'm saying we generally said like we accept 0 values, and then if you down pass 0, then we throw. Because clearly you're indexing into something that doesn't exist.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at what framework does. So that means that we have a history of people should not have been passing 0 into this method.
Right.
If we clean that up in...
We will never clean up much. There's so much stuff to clean up. It's like, where you start? It's like crypto. It is what it is at this point.
I assume read byte, etc. all throw. It says it's going to type it as an array, but it's an internal call. So.
Right.
It actually calls the Win32 shim and then calls indy RU1.
I feel like I'm falling asleep here. I don't know what it is.
I'm looking at stuff like read byte, read int 16, and so on. Yeah, their behavior is they throw if the input's null, but they throw an access violation exception. Because of course.
Because they're marshalling. You gave it null.
Yeah.
That's what it means when you deref null.
I guess OFS means oh for fuck's sake. So
yes.
that makes sense. Is that offset? Is that what it's supposed to be?
Yes, that's what it is.
Odd.
What's CB?
Normally
Count
CB
bytes.
is counted bytes.
I mean, come on.
Count of bytes.
Yes, as opposed to CCH, which is count of characters.
I see. Okay.
You know Hungarian.
All right, release com object will throw
I don't know
A
any
null
ref
acronyms.
if you give it null.
Yeah.
Yeah, the punk
Size of throws if it's given null.
makes sense.
All the int pointer returning things special case null.
They always throw, right?
No, it's a
They should, but
no, because if you do string to beaster to string 0, it gives you back 0.
obviously.
Structure to pointer taking an object is an internal.
For things like structure to pointer, do we need to do like the where t is object, as was mentioned earlier?
So which one are you talking about? These guys here?
Structure to pointer. It's directly underneath the block of yellow. Yeah. Or does that break existing colors?
So the parameter attribute on T structure has the attribute disallow null. Again, we just can't see here. We can either see attributes or diffs, but not both.
Okay. Okay, got it.
So it has said that if the T is a reference type, null should not go into this parameter. Yes, once we started doing all this, we found out that nullability didn't work for generic, and we had to go invent generic nullability.
Okay, great. Fortunately, I have a conflict right now.
Which means you're teaching us what you're saying?
I am.
You're not.
Unsafe address of
Sorry.
pinned array
Your smile
element.
betrays your apologies.
Uh,
I'm so sorry I can't come to your meeting.
yeah. So the unsafe address of pinned array element for both methods does throw A&E if array is null.
So which one?
The ones right above your cursor are correct.
Okay.
They, unlike half of Marshall, but like the other half of Marshall, they don't handle null. And I assume write byte is going to be an internal call, means I don't care what it does.
Yeah, but these are also the kind of things you expect from Nullable anyway, right?
If PTR is null, throw new access violation exception.
Marshall as attribute. Whatever. Yeah, they can all be null, obviously.
Exceptions take null.
Who was the poor person who annotated interrupt services? Was it you or was it Steve? No?
What?
Who added interrupt services? Who
I don't remember.
was probably Steven, right? Probably not.
It might have been me, but I can't remember.
All right, native library load throws if you give it null.
Yeah, I believe that.
The try loads also throw if you give them null.
It is optional preserve memory. The proc ID attribute. That makes sense. That doesn't know.
So prog ID attribute, there's only one caller, and it checks for null. On that.
It just ignores it.
It turns it into string.empty.
But how is it useful?
Just like somewhere under Marshall, there's generate prog ID for type, and if the type has the attribute but the value is null, it returns string.empty. Which is different than if the attribute's missing.
Then we return null.
If the attribute's missing, it returns type.fullname. So if the attribute is null, it gets type.fullname. If the attribute's present, it returns value unless it's null, and then it returns string.empty.
Okay, I have a hard time coming up with a scenario where you put apply proc to attribute without specifying the proc ID.
That's fair. I'm just like, we do handle it. The Marshall does handle it, so theoretically it should be string question mark on both the constructor and the property. But if we want to say it's interrupt services, we're just going to tell you that don't put null here. That's fine.
I mean, if somebody comes up with a scenario where we have to can drop the question mark, right? Or like not drop, add it, I guess.
Yep.
Runtime environment seems weird though. Like, wouldn't you expect such a configuration file to be nullable?
Why?
Because you might not have one.
Presumably it's just going to tell you the path that it was going to look at.
I guess that's fair. It makes no guarantee that the file actually exists.
Core throws. Platform not supported exception.
In that case, whatever you want to put there. What's the global access cache? Does that mean global assembly cache?
Probably. And then system configuration file on runtime is what the path or what the file should be. It doesn't check for it. It checks that you have the CAS permission to talk about it.
Okay. Save buffer.
What was the previous save?
Previous.
I have sense.
Unless you mean whatever.
The save buffer.
Oh, the save buffer?
Or was it used?
No, save buffer was used. We didn't
Okay.
look at save buffer itself.
Yeah, and the from global access cache, which then is return a.global assembly cache. So yes, they expanded GAC, and it'll null ref. Not null is correct.
They fucked it up, man. Oh boy. Yep. Do that.
What is the value on the type lib?
It's probably the fully qualified type name. Oh boy, this is so sad.
Type lib import class attribute. Import class.toString, which is
I think same as full name.
nope. It is
Assembly
the string type :space followed by assembly.name, followed by type.name, so the short name.
Sure.
It's a pretty useless value.
An unknown wrapper can take a null object.
Apparently, I mean,
It returns it to you happily. It's good.
presumably what they're documenting here is that it didn't check on anything, and as long as you don't actually pass it to COM, it won't care. But you could use the type to be a wrapped object for whatever purposes you wanted to.
Okay. I'm making a decision we're not reviewing this namespace because this is garbage. Com types is just a bunch of wrappers for predefined com interfaces that nobody should use.
But it
so-
looks like
Yeah,
even
just
structs
skim it. They're
anyway.
probably all just
Yeah.
structs and enum.
So just scroll through it just to see.
Or click a button that makes the projector angry.
Let's verify that it's all just enum and structs. Go quickly.
And then even if it's classes, I don't
Yeah,
really
yeah,
care.
sure.
Like I would just
Yep, that's it.
it's
Is that
just
it? Nothing more.
interfaces where like it's not worth it. Like almost none of them make sense. Like,
Yeah.
like
Sure.
it's
There have been too many diffs. I don't care now.
so let me just go up.
I was much happier when it was all just value structs and enums, and then we could say we at least looked. But
Yeah. So we looked.
We looked.
We decided we don't care. All right. Secure string. I feel very similar with secure string. That's also simple. It's fine.
no, it takes value.
Perfect.
What about copy?
Huh?
It returns secure string.
I believe that saying if you have a non-null secure string and you call copy, it will not return null. Because it would be pretty shitty if secure string.copy returned null.
I'm amazed it's not typed as returning object. I mean, let's be real. Like that's normally the way. I guess it's clone normally.
Yes, this is clone, but for some reason they call it copy
Well, we
Oh.
have both of them.
because it's a deep copy. They're making there's a comment to do a deep copy of the secure string. I believe we have said that object that equals object is object question mark. Like the event registration token.
That's what we usually said. Yes.
Yeah. You should just return false.
So the annotation is correct, right? That's the.
Yeah. Put in the question. The registration token table of T is weird because it says where T is class, but it clearly uses where T is delegate. I know.
You can say with T colon delegate.
If nothing else, you should be able to say delegate with a capital D, which is any type that extends system.delegate.
No, I don't think you can. I think delegate in enum you cannot express. The compiler doesn't allow it. It's a common feature request though.
Enum they added finally.
Did they?
Yeah, like C#, 87.
87.
Yeah, somewhere in the 7 to 8.
I see.
Because IL has always supported the enum.
So basically add more methods. What is it you use?
Well, in Wilson, for example, they allow you to they basically have generic methods over the syntax APIs, and you're supposed to pass in either the VB syntax kind or the C# syntax kind, but you can only instantiate it with enums.
Yeah.
And by enums, usually one of the two.
Enums with that.
For what?
Like, because like when you have like a enum, like backed by integer, you have to always explicitly cast it. Can you add the implicit operator to that?
I don't remember. But it lets you do the things like understand that the toString is always going to make sense, or that you can call enum.getStrings, and then it's not going to throw. So it constrains it so that you're in a safer operating instead of where like enum.getValues says it takes an unconstrained T and then throws if T is not an enum. It would have been nicer to just say it's constrained.
Although it is contrived.
Attributes. Is Windows runtime? That is the namespace right now.
I think so, yeah.
Why does it have a read-only array at Windows? Whatever.
Do you see this?
Middle of your screen. Read-only array. Return value. That return value name. Don't seem like they have anything to do with Windows.
No, but there were patterns in the WinRT API service that basically represent the projections of. I mean, it's their attribute, right? It's how their attributes are projected to ours.
Okay.
But I
This is null
remember
throw.
we talked about this how it's different from in, and I forgot. In versus out. It only has different behavior.
All right. Windows runtime marshal.string to hstring will throw if given null.
I actually think I approved the API back then. Oh.
And all these throw if WinRT is not supported. Hit activation factory throws if I believe adamant handler also. Seems reasonable.
So that means you have no feedback to this one. I can check, but I think these were the only things he gave me. So we only have where's the oh the fuck, I dropped more files while we were reviewing.
Wi-Fi was good enough
He
for that.
saw that we made good progress. Ah, Santi, that is so sad. All right. So collections concurrent, didn't we review? Oh no, this is when Steven is around. Okay, we said we will do this later. So we did. What happened here?
You have back-to-back meetings instead of 1 2-hour meetings.
No, apparently, remember when the projector went dark?
Yeah.
Apparently that killed the meeting.
Oh. Sometimes.
Yeah, okay, so let's do the following then. So concurrent we skip. Let's do concrete. Concrete. Oh, this one is empty.
Are you sharing?
No, I'm looking on my thing what I'm throwing up. By throwing up, I mean on the projector. Just to be clear.
Yeah.
I mean, certain APIs make me certainly want to consider that as an action I can take. All right, system diagnosis debug. Well, that's probably because you probably added those guys.
All of these can be null. But not the format string and print. Or print that takes a form.
So print that takes a format we throw.
Which means it's fine. Probably right line has the same.
I mean, those are also the kind of places where really throwing is probably a bad idea, but I guess.
Because the problem is the string.format throws if you give it a null form. And they just didn't handle it.
Yeah, that
in
makes
debug.
sense. So they all make sense then, right? I mean, they're all consistent with what we usually say.
Right, so you can call writeLine with a null message, which write a blank line.
Yep.
But if you call writeLine with format, you have to give it a format. And then writeLine, again, string.format also carries the
Debugger default category. What the fuck would that be now? That's a constant. We cannot agree on the constant. Literally the constant is now. Debugger dot default category. Oh, that makes me sad.
Want to log with the default category.
And that is now. Wait.
In fact, yes, it's a static read-only string null. So you call these APIs of category default category. It's just a fancy way of saying null. Or by fancy, I mean wrong. Shockingly, there are no references to that in .NET Framework.
But I'm glad we have a field access everywhere now.
No, we don't, because
Yeah, because we don't call it, but because I guess we determine that, well, because we don't build with debug, I suppose, right? Right. Is the source index in debug context or in release context?
probably really. The default category is in 0.2% of API port telemetry.
So 0.12% of people doing a really expensive null access.
Yep.
Debugger display. Yep. What happens if we make this now? How is that useful?
Presumably it falls back to toString.
Well, that seems like a dumb thing.
If you give it the null value in its constructor, it turns it into the empty string. So the constructor explicitly handles null.
I get that. All I'm saying is that how is this useful? It's similar to the proc ID. Like it seems like you're not displaying nothing in the debugger. So might as well then multiply the attribute, right?
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is
If you want to hide the value by
yeah, if you were injecting these at runtime and maybe you got a null somewhere, I don't know. That's weird. That's an attribute.
Argue that.
the
How is that
type
possible?
name. I think
Are you looking at
something-
debugger type proxy?
I think I know what the answer is. One of the two is not null.
I'd be ignoring what is
Okay.
possible.
So if you've instantiated it with a null type argument, it will throw. And then if it's not a null type argument, then it will
Oh no, I know why. That makes
use
sense, actually.
assembly qualified name. But if the type is
Because-
a generic type,
Always one of them is non-null, right?
no, because if the type is a generic type, then assembly qualified name might return null, right?
Sure.
So
So I think what
actually
you
we
said
say
is true, right? Like I think yeah, this is just one corner case, but I guess if you call this constructor, then this one is set unless what you just said is true. If you call this constructor, then this one is set and this one is not.
they're actually banging it away. So I think that there are cases that you can construct it. You probably can't do it in an attribute declaration, which is probably why they said it's not null. Because I don't think in an attribute declaration you can talk about a generic parameter.
I think you're right.
But if you created one of these at runtime, you could definitely get a null back by passing in a method generic parameter.
No, actually you can. And then that's the type. You should be able to see the outer type parameter.
Yeah. So we might need to say proxy type name is nullable.
But I would generally say it seems like a bad idea.
Okay. All right. So target. If value.
I mean, I believe that target is null when you instantiate it with a type name, or do they actually resolve the type name?
Target is null unless you call set.
What?
It targets gets target without resolving anything. If
The
you call
constructor that takes the type doesn't set it?
if you
What the fuck?
the only thing the constructor does is set proxy type name in both of them.
Oh.
Then target returns the value you've stored in it. But if you store a value in it, it will recompute target type name. So target type name is only set if you set target. And if you set target type name, it doesn't reset target. This is
So does it mean I can apply the attribute on the proxy and point to the target type that I'm the proxy for?
I don't know, because I think if you call the get attributes, it gives you. I mean, there must be a method that gives you back this specific attribute, because otherwise it would give you a new attribute every time you called the method, so nothing would be proxying.
You would think that adding a nullability annotation shouldn't be that hard, right?
Yeah.
Like, we can't even figure out what the flow is for these.
Yeah, no. So definitely, if you just call the API and you get one of these off of the get custom attributes, target type name is null and target is null,
Sure.
and then you can change either of those via the setters.
So that means attributed correctly, even though we're.
It's correct, except that technically speaking, there is a type you can give it that would turn proxy type name into null. You just said you don't care, so now we can move on.
Well, probably there's only two code paths that actually read this attribute: the VS debugger and and probably whoever else wrote the debugger, right? Debugger visualize attribute.
I don't even know what that does. Never used one of those.
When you expand certain collection types, we show you not the actual type. We show you the.
Oh, this is the plus instead of the.
Oh, sorry, no, sorry. The type proxies for collections. The visualizer is the loop that we show that shows you like an XML editor or a text editor. It basically pops up UI.
Okay. I'm gonna trust they got it right.
Again, there's like two people using that, so
Yep.
maybe we don't care.
Hence my I'll trust they got it right. If VS Debug wants to complain that we either need to add or remove a question mark, we will do whatever they ask.
Exactly. Like, they're probably also the only ones who know the correct answer. That's it. Export.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely like. So I pulled it up, where it definitely throws a lot of argument null exceptions in its constructors. You can definitely put the system in a state where get custom attributes will throw.
Oh, you can. It's just generally bad, right?
Right. So saying do not put null here is good.
Probably the right thing, yeah. All right, so then close this guy. And move this guy other side of the screen. New instance. All right. So contracts we don't have yet. Debug we just did. Check trace. This wouldn't be such a all right. Here we go. Stack trace.
Is this implemented in CorLib as well?
Well, yeah, they're all. I mean, we only review stuff that is in CorLib.
Okay.
What do you ask?
No, I thought because it was in diagnostic, I thought it was core of S.
So, in framework, the get method says contract ensures result is not null.
So which one?
For
Method-based get method.
For get method?
What about generic method? No, because you cannot get this factor.
It
Actually, makes sense.
It says, public virtual method-based get method, contract.ensures, contract.result, method-based, not null.
That's probably correct.
So the contracts API from framework said that this is non-nullable.
And again, I'm not sure we actually validated that ever, so there might have been an empty promise.
You mean like contracts?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that value is null by default, but it promises that it's not null.
Right. And core, we just, yeah, exactly. When you set structure.
So
Where does it come from? Overridden only?
So when some of the constructors will do it. I think the problem is some.
Even if you set, doesn't mean that the which acquires the method. I'm pretty sure like the reflection APIs, the get method they return.
Actually, all the public constructors in framework, all of them unless you give it a number of frames to skip that is more than the current call stack is tall, it will be non-null.
So when are we returning now then?
I'm looking to see if in core we are less eager
someone
to get
needs to investigate it. Just
Yeah, so that one should be looked at. It seems like not null is the right answer, but if they have a reason,
Seems to me it seems more logical. I mean, file name makes sense, right? You might not have symbols, but
yeah.
stack frame extensions, yeah, those make sense to me. Better pass in a non-null stack frame.
the get frames should be outer array normal.
Yes, that's a good point. That seems also fishy. It shouldn't return that. Stack frame. Frames.
If you call the constructor that takes an exception, a skip frames, and a need file info, I think it might let the stack frame.
What does that mean?
That the reason that get frame says it can sometimes return a completely null array is if you call the longest constructor
So
and you
the
tell it
value-
to skip more frames than exist. I think it says then get frames returns null. So you tell it skip 30 frames, but you're only 5 frames off of the thread start.
5 and you skip 5 with gonna
I mean, my point still stands. I think null is weird as a return value there, but.
If methods to skip is, or the only time it will populate that array is if number of frames to populate is not, or is greater than 0. Well, it says not 0. It'll be greater than. So if you ask it to skip the entire stack frame, then you'll get back null. So it is an unchecked argument or an unchecked constructor input that gives you null back. So it makes sense. It's not anything most people will ever see, but it is easy.
Git reader.
iSymbol binder and iSymbol binder 1, which looks exactly like iSymbol binder.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
those
no.
are the ones are.
It's an int pinner.
I think I don't care.
Should it have been iSymbol binder 2?
Oh, look at this. This is sexy.
We have no iSymbol binders, and
Of course we don't.
the get sequence points allows every argument to be null. I guess it's still API.
Right, it's some COM API, right? I think it's in. I think this is the native PDB readers and writers, which they are what they are, right? All right.
Willing to believe that the
I call this.
iSymbol writer requires all those symbols to be. And these are easy.
Right, so this was stack trace. We did loader, Windows runtime, and drop services, stack trace, debug, contracts. So contracts we don't have we don't have an after. We do have a before. Let me drop in the before and see if there are any question marks. Well, how about this? We just review this. Even though there is no after, we can decide what we want the annotations to be then.
I think it would.
Well, it's just the unified diff representation.
It would show everything is deleted, right?
No, it will just diff the APIs. It would basically just be a non-diff. No changes.
Contract ensures on throw. I guess part of the problem here is none of the code for this is actually in CorLib.
Yeah. I
So,
believe that.
Contract assert or ensures on throw a condition and a message, then doesn't use any of those arguments. It means that it's the contract tool understands what to do with all of these things. Who knows what it does?
Yeah, I would just go over this and see, like, do we expect anything to be nullable here? But I guess the answer would be...
Well, like, ensures on throw might take a null message. Maybe
I think the safest bet would be just not to take non-null.
yeah. No idea what contract.old value is supposed to do.
I mean, quite frankly, I don't think we care about code contracts anymore, right? For us, it's a dead technology.
Represent the value of value as it was at the start of this method.
So which one are you talking about?
Contract.old value. T. Makes a T and returns a T.
And similarly, value added.
So
Presumably like the fluency.
So the description is represents the value of value as it was at the start of the method or property.
Yeah, it's basically a way for you to express the relationship between the old state of the object and the new state of the object.
Yeah, but I think that the if anyone wants to use this, they may have to throw a bunch of bangs and question marks at it, and when they complain, let them complain. Yeah, no, I mean none of this code's here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so I think these were all the assemblies that we had on the share, at least. So we looked at everything but concurrent, because that one we should probably review with Steven. We did contracts, we did debug, we did stack trace, we did interrupt service, interrupt purpose of Windows runtime, and loader. So we're good for what I got from Santi.
How much is left
Yes.
as concurrent?
Vectors, emit IL generation, emit lightweight, primitives, resource manager, principal, encoding extensions. I think we did system buffers, didn't we? No, we did system memory. Concurrent, diagnostic tools, and tracing. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. But they're all small contracts.
Yeah.
I think the only big one was emit.
Exactly.
It's not that big, it's 18K. Shouldn't be that big. Alright, then I think that's it for today then. Nobody's on the call anymore, so let's do that. Hang up there. And I think live stream, there's a few people connected, and I will hang up now.
Bye.